Breaking news in Lincoln City. Orbit trials have officially been rearranged. Saturdays and Sundays now open to all trials. Raphael's once lonely Saturday slot? Gone, reassigned, crushed beneath the bureaucratic boot of scheduling efficiency. Froggie theorists everywhere are reeling. For more on this tragic development, let's cut to our correspondent, I, live at the scene. I?
Oh, where?
Welcome back to my channel, besties! If you're new here, hi! You've stumbled into my personal descent into madness, also known as trying to find Froggie before info gaslights us into thinking he was never real to begin with. And babes, it looks like they're trying, and failing, to gaslight us hard! One of the biggest signs pointing to Froggie's arrival, erased. All it took was one version update and one post for info to Thanos snap an entire year of clues. So, before we go any further into what this second video was originally going to cover, we need to get this straight. Froggie theories were never just about the orbit schedule. Sure, we all love the orbit trials crumb saga, me especially, but that was just the appetizer. The real meat, the juicy lore steak, it's been there the whole time. Firstly, the missing yellow solar pair. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Even with a Lumiere rerun and Raphael's rumored third myth, we're still left with no yellow 5-star solar pairs in X-Space Echo. The gap? Still gaping. Secondly, the narrative foils in mirror pairs. Story pattern? Still incomplete. Silas is still missing his narrative mirror and Raphael is still missing his narrative foil. Finally, the coming soon logo. As long as that coming soon logo stays branded on the boys like a narrative tramp stamp, I will not be moved. If info thinks they can gaslight me, I will gaslight gatekeep girl boss them back. Huh? Hello? Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh. I see. Thank you. Oh, we are so back, Froggie Rotters! If all of that sounded like gibberish to you, no worries. This video is actually part 2 of my Froggie descent, and if you need a little recap, or a lot, check out part 1. Timestamps are in the comments so you can skip to the juicy bits. In the meantime, I'll do my best to catch you up without making you feel like you missed an entire season of anime filler. Alright, bestie.
Bye.
Gloves back on. It's digging time. So let's go back a few months. Specifically, the end of December through early January. That's when the devs hit us with something brand new. A text message from someone who wasn't a love interest. Shocking, I know. I mean, up until that point, all in-game messages came from the boys. But just before Caleb's tragic boy comeback arc, we got something completely unexpected. A message from Lincoln City Hall. It basically said, "Hey, come pick up the death certificates for Grandma Josephine and Caleb because of..." Naturally, the fandom went feral.
Mr. City Hall is our next ally!
We laughed, we cried, we memed. Ah, good times. But then it happened again. 2 more times, actually. One from Tara and one from Twinkle Toys. Now, with City Hall, you don't get to respond, but with Tara and Twinkle Toys, you do. Tara's message was cute and all, but it didn't set off any internal sirens. That's our bestie in-game after all, but Twinkle Toys? Yeah. It had me squinting. Twinkle Toys sends you some generic New Year's wishes, totally harmless, but we have the ability to reply in one of 2 ways. 1, unsubscribe, or 2, wish them a happy New Year's back. Whichever you pick, TKO responds the same way. We hope you're healthy, successful in all your endeavors, and get lots of money in the new year. And honestly, yeah, same, Pooks. We all need a bit of that green. Now, the pessimist in me agreed that this was probably just misdirection to make Caleb's return more impactful. But the dreamer? The romantic? The girl who once cried over this photo of cutie patootie drunk Zane whispered, "Wait, hold on. What if Froggie's some kind of hacking genius who doesn't have any other way to contact MC directly, so he sends her a New Year's message through a corporate shell instead, just to feel close to her, even for a moment?" I shelved the thought, filed it under cute but delulu, until Infold released the newest World Underneath chapters. And y'all, there was a lot to unpack here, but 2 chapters in particular, Depths of Chaos and Elysium, had my Froggie senses tingling. Both hinted at someone watching, someone in the shadows, someone who wants to reach MC but can't. In Depths of Chaos, we follow the story of Wontoni, that cute little flying AI assistant from Abyssal Chaos. And surprise, surprise, he's out in Lincoln causing absolute chaos. He's out here in Lincoln assigning random missions to people who absolutely should not be doing them, just to watch the drama unfold. Like giving a literal delinquent the task of pretending to be someone's dad at a parent-teacher conference. And he eats that drama up, tuning into these mismatches and treating humanity like a big old social experiment, watching the meltdowns and the mess, all to study how we tick. But there was one mission that really made that Froggie alarm in my head start blaring. Wontoni assigns a mission to a student of a deceased professor, a professor who unalived himself after being ruined by a rogue AI that faked documents and data to discredit him. The AI named W, formerly known as Number 1. And Wontoni, he is absolutely vibing with W. Bros, besties, unbothered by the literal murder by data forgery saga. While they're off high-fiving over how easily humanity can be duped, Wontoni suddenly senses something. A disturbance in the Force. A program, a level of tech way beyond what humans should be capable of right now. He questions this mysterious program. What do you want? And the response? Yep, that little birdie is none other than our favorite mechanical boy, Mephisto. And Mephisto doesn't just say hi and leave. No. He rewires Wontoni's literal circuits, triggering something ancient in his code. And Wontoni, the same sassy, mischievous AI gremlin we've been following, suddenly folds. As you wish, he says, just like that. How does that link to Froggie exactly? Let's jump over to the Woo chapter, Elysium, and I only have to show you one thing here to paint a clear picture. We follow Phantom Thief P, or PTP, on his nightly prowl, when he takes a quick detour into a curious little shop called Chris's Antiques and Oddities. And what does he find? A frog plushie, locked in a birdcage. Now, at first glance, you might think, okay, cute Easter egg, but if you've been anywhere near the Froggie theory corner of the fandom, heck, maybe even just scrolling past us in the tags, you already know this plushie has been driving us absolutely feral, because this isn't just some throwaway background asset. This isn't another crane game prize we'll see once and forget. This plushie might actually belong to Froggie. Let's break it down. We've got Mephisto, Silas's mechanical crowboy, influencing Wontoni's behavior somehow, someway. Wontoni, a chaos AI with shady allegiances, and a frog, trapped in a birdcage, in a chapter tied to Silas's narrative. So this is my theory. I think it's possible that Froggie may have been the inventor of Wontoni and other autos, and with his disappearance and Ever's pivoting of his creations, it's possible the AI he intended to be helpful morphed into something more corrupted. Just look at the TKO logo in Wontoni. Do they not look eerily similar? Still not convinced? Alright, let me toss one more suspicious little breadcrumb onto this Froggie-laced trail. In this article, TKO is announcing a new line of Wanderer plushies that they're planning to release to the public. Their designs submitted by an anonymous masked man in the middle of the night, who claims he was inspired by Pumpkin Magus while absolutely... Sir, be so for real right now. And the only name he gave? Z. Now, let's be clear, Z doesn't mean much on its own. It's a single letter. It could be random, it could be nothing. But this isn't the first time a love interest has gone undercover using a one-letter moniker. Silas, in his recent banner storyline, goes by Mr. R, and an in-game article even mentions a Mr. R making a hefty donation to the Hunters Association. So if you're paying attention to Infold's patterns, this kind of subtle alias drop is very on brand. Speaking of suspiciously illuminating articles, let's talk about the in-game conspiracy columnist of choice, Mystery Teller. This shady little lore master has left us a few breadcrumbs over the months, and if we read between the lines, the pattern is undeniable. Let's start with Mr. R. Given Mr. R's reputation for impeccable taste, this unexpected purchase has ignited speculation regarding his true identity. Some speculate that he might be a prominent figure within the field of evil weapons development. Others believe he comes from a wealthy background as a hunter. There are even theories suggesting he's a formidable mercenary hiding in the N109 zone. Of course, we now know Mr. R is Silas. Jump forward to another article, this time about the Farspace fleet. After that, they faded into obscurity until they recently reappeared with a new colonel. This colonel's background is a total mystery. Even I can't dig up anything on him. He practically came out of nowhere. That colonel? None other than Caleb. So let's look at what Mystery Teller's doing here. They aren't naming names, they're planting concepts, intrigue, speculation, aura. They frame these men as whispers, rumors, urban legends with a well-dressed edge. And now, enter article number 3. As a result, the commission remains unclaimed, sparking a frenzy within the Abyssal Chaos community. Some believe it's an elite hacker testing Hunter's limits, while others suspect it's the work of a legendary information broker who has stayed hidden for years. Rumors even suggest that this might be a secret code from the creator of Abyssal Chaos themselves. After all, even the best hackers can't dig up any information about the network's creator. Sound familiar? Same framing, same speculative tone, same narrative technique that was used to introduce both Silas and Caleb. No silhouettes, no model teases, just diegetic mystery seeded through the game world. Infold's calling card. So if this hacker isn't Froggie, then Mystery Teller's breaking their own pattern. But if he is, then we're looking at the third time Infold has used this exact narrative mechanism to slip a love interest into the lore before he ever appears in-game. Let's roll back the tape again and recap. 1. We've got a plushie-obsessed masked man dropping designs off at TKO. 2. TKO has a visual connection to Wontoni. 3. Wontoni is now confirmed to be influenced by Mephisto. 4. We've got a frog plushie trapped in a birdcage during Silas's narrative arc. And 5. Wait, is it 5? Anyway, allies have a precedent of using one-letter aliases like Mr. R. So yeah, Z might not scream Froggie just yet, but when you add in all these threads, Z is suspicious enough to watch. Lastly, number 6. Yeah, number 6. Mystery Teller has a track record of teasing LIs through cryptic speculation-driven articles, with identical phrasing now used for an unnamed hacker. So I guess what I'm saying is, make of all that what you will. So if you watched my first video, you'll remember that I determined Froggie is meant to be Raphael's narrative foil and Silas's narrative mirror. Let's revisit the mirror pairs real quick. Raphael, Fire versus Zane, Ice, both fighting Xander Sciences. Caleb, Gravity versus Xavier, Light, both undergoing body augmentation experiments, another ever offshoot. So if Froggie has an evolve that directly opposes Silas's, then by Infold logic, they're likely facing the same enemy faction, a third division of the Ever design. But here's where I want to repeat something I clarified in part 1. Narrative foils and mirrors are meant to highlight, not to showcase hater game realness. None of the allies are written as villains to each other. They're all protagonists, all on the same battlefield, just using different evils, different philosophies, and carrying different baggage. Which brings us back to the birdcage. When the frog plushie showed up locked inside a cage, a lot of people understandably jumped to the idea that, oh, Silas must have trapped Froggie. Because, yes, birdcages are a huge part of Silas's aesthetic. And yes, the frog plushie is very likely Froggie's. But here's the thing, when Silas is associated with a birdcage, he's never on the outside. He's always inside it. Voluntarily, involuntarily, symbolically, literally. Just look at his Catch-22 card. He isolates himself in a huge, intricate cage, not to control others, but to protect them from the danger of himself. He's not the captor. He's the bird. So what does that make Froggie? Another bird. Another brilliant, broken creature who's trapped, not by Silas, but possibly by the same monolith that cages Silas too. Maybe that frog plushie in the cage isn't a symbol of capture. It's a sign of shared suffering. And remember Wontani? Of course you do, we just talked about the little fella. Mephisto rewires him, right? And you would think that would spell subjugation in some form for Wontani, but Wontani doesn't necessarily feel that. In fact, the Wu goes out of its way to explain that it doesn't make him feel any malicious intent. What if Mephisto wasn't enslaving Wontani? What if he was setting him free? What if the birdcage imagery isn't about dominance, but about liberation? In part 1 of my deep dive on Froggie, I brought up this kitty badge, which I suspect could actually be hinting at Froggie, possibly his eye color, and possibly with his name by that CWS behind the cat's ears. But I actually found out recently that the English translation of the epitaph doesn't bring it justice. In fact, in the CN version, rather than saying the cat is not out of the bag in English, more so indicating a hidden secret, it actually says something along the lines of, "I'm trapped, let me out!" And you know what? Somebody does. Phantom Thief P steals the plushie from within the birdcage after sensing there was a bomb inside it, and then gives it to Aelin, the owner of Elysium, as an object of comfort. Maybe the plushie in the cage isn't saying, "I'm trapped by you, Silas." Maybe it's saying, "Set me free too, and give me a home to rest my weary wings." So what monolith will Silas and Froggie be fighting against? My guess? The Gaia Research Center. What do we know about Gaia? Yes, it's the lab that studied Lemurian cells, but more importantly, it's the very lab that experimented on MC as a child. It's where Josephine and the other scientists discovered MC's ability to resurrect, thanks to the protocore that formed in her heart, the one Josephine later dubbed the Ether Core. And we know that Ever's been chasing it ever since. And perhaps even Silas. Now, Silas isn't after MC's Ether Core specifically, but he knows exactly what it is. And more than that, he's in a position to act on it. How? Because he's not just anyone, he's the boss of Onychinus. And his organization, they've been modifying protocores to replicate the energy electron volt of Ether Cores. That's not just casual curiosity, that's targeted research, purposeful collection, maybe even preservation. Not to mention, it is interesting that Silas of all LI is collecting Gaia strays like evolved Pokemon, namely with Philip, the owner of Odd Workshop, who once worked with Josephine but now works for Onychinus, and under Silas, who I also suspect may have been Experiment 303, and Luke and Kieran, who are failed Protocore experiment subjects 808. And lest we forget, prior to meeting up with Homegirl MC again, Silas had mysteriously disappeared from Onychinus, so long that traders like Sherman tried to run this joint and usurp it from right under him. Why did he leave? We still don't know, but knowing Silas, he might have been out looking for something big enough where he felt that leaving Onychinus for the time being was the only option. In the world underneath Elysium, we find out that the N109 zone was finally unified under one ruler after a protocore map was acquired by Silas. It's possible he may be looking for a specific protocore revealed by that map, maybe one that could finally save MC once and for all. And I think, in a way, he found one, with the Ether Core nestled atop the Onychinus auction. And what does he do with it? He gives it to MC with no real frills or fuss. But maybe just a little frill. He's not hoarding power, he's trying to help her reclaim it. But my Delulu is telling me his search ain't done. In his card Lost Oasis, Silas tells MC about an old woman who helped him get back on his feet after wandering the desert and nearly planting face down unto death. And what does this man say? That he's gonna take another deep plunge into the sand.
My man!
Even in the most recent multi, he casually drops that he's been in yet another desert. Again. What is he even looking for? And more importantly, who does that remind you of?
This isn't it.
That was something Xavier had been trying to do in his first encounter with MC, and it's still something he seems to be doing now. And MC said it best. Maybe she, Xavier, and Silas are all working towards the same goal. And I'm willing to bet Froggie is at the center of all that. But let's hold the phone for a second. When looking at the story of love in Deepspace, each new ally we're introduced to explores a new facet of Lincoln that MC can explore and discover. But what other location has been left untouched? Well, that'd be the Protofields, specifically the worlds within them. From the start, Protofields have been a subject of intrigue for both the Lincoln citizens and us. What do we actually know about Protofields? Well, they're the fields that open up when we have to defeat wanderers, and some of the arenas themselves look familiar to us because we've seen them as backdrops to other myths, like Silas's Philos in Beyond Cloudfall and even the tower in Zane's Foreseer myth. There's even one area with a mysterious symbol etched into the center. So suspicious, the game itself literally prompts us to look closer. And I remember thinking, even way back when I first started playing, could these be full-fledged worlds unto themselves? Are there civilizations, people, life beyond just the wanderers who opened the portals? And then the world underneath chapter Utopian Roamer dropped and gave us a potential answer. Here we follow Professor Shaylin, an archaeologist interested in observing what's within these protofields. During her exploration, she realizes a bunch of these worlds upon worlds look much like our own, with individual climates and terrain like snowy, frigid mountains or desert regions. Things we already knew, yada yada yada, but what's new is that in some of the bigger worlds she discovers, there's infrastructure and real-world settlements, signs of past occupancy, but she's unsure. Most likely because there are no people to lay claim to them. She wonders, perhaps it's possible that the people the Wanderers supposedly killed might still be alive and simply just lost in these vast worlds, waiting to be found. And she's not the only one who thinks that. In Silas's card Lost Oasis, a boy lost his father when he disappeared into one of the Wanderers' protofields, but he still believes his father is alive, and so he's determined to bring him back, against all better judgment. This, my friends, is where Froggie might come in. Because what if Froggie isn't in Lincoln at all? What if he's inside a protofield? What if he's from them? What does he know that the others don't? What does he know that the others already do? Would he happen to know what those symbols in the protofield mean? Does Silas know that he knows and that's why he and the frog plushie are in the proverbial bird cages? Does he have a protocore map himself? All of these questions just rattling off, but then why hasn't he shown himself? What's stopping him? Could it be that even his evil isn't enough to cross the boundary? That he needs something else? Professor Shaylin asks the same question. What serves as the key for free access to this space? Enter the Spatium Core. In Caleb's most recent story update, we're introduced to it, an ether core with the ability to manipulate space itself and create new spaces. It's possible that the game is already ramping us up to meet him this way. We know that Spatium Core belonged to a sweet little boy named Kevy, until he was snatched up by that dingbat Professor Lucius. The same Lucius who's been pulling Caleb's strings, modifying his body, collecting special evil kids like their Infinity Stones, running the Turing Cybernetics Institute as the lead researcher on behalf of Ever, and now He has the spatium core in his possession, the same core that could grant MC access to the lost worlds of the protofields, the same core that could allow her to finally find him. But there's also another unconventional way of entering this space. The thing is, it requires a bit more sacrifice. Let's talk about the Fountain of Atei. At the end of Caleb's most recent main story chapter, we're given a passage, a strange poetic verse that reads like a hymn. Most of us have heard of the Fountain of Atei in passing. It's been mentioned in Silas's main story, and lore-wise, we understand it to be a project, a goal, Ever's codename for their ambitious endgame, immortality. But here's what I think. What if it's not just about living forever? What if it's about going home? Read it from the perspective of a backtracker, the travelers who accompanied Xavier back to Lincoln from future Philos, and it starts to click into place. Let me read it to you now, this time with that context in mind. In a forest where shattered stars rest, a crystalline pool appears, as if infused with the wine of life. It's clear, yet murky. Young traveler, do not drink from it. Lost lover, do not drink from it. But when flowers wither in their sleep, when winds fall silent, when the vigilant owl closes its eyes, only then can you drink deep of these waters. Let the dead sing. O Fountain of Atei, cleanse my time, nourish my flesh, spare me from the loneliness of eternal rest. Spare me from the loneliness of eternal rest. This isn't a riddle. It's a coping mechanism, a hymn, a quiet, poetic ritual that backtrackers whisper to themselves to justify the costs, or to mourn the losses they've suffered along the way. And the imagery is pretty dang clear. The same forest tied to Xavier's deepest trauma, the place where bodies were sacrificed to Philos' core, where immortality came, but only at the price of human life. And that line, do not drink from it. That's not just a metaphor, that's a warning, because they know what happens when you try to defy death, and yet they persist, perhaps to return home to a reality they're accustomed to, where immortality wasn't just the stuff of dreams, but a given. Now here's where things get really wild, because I don't think Ever was just some corrupt, morally bankrupt research group that popped up out of nowhere. I think the backtrackers built it from the ground up. Think about it. They crash-landed in the past, their ship was wrecked, they were stranded with no way to return to Philos, their home in the future. So what would they do? They turned to science, to theory, to experimental tech, to anything that could rebuild the path back home, because it's literally what they know. And somewhere along the line, that desperate mission turned into Ever. And there's evidence for this. Just look at the raincoats, the shadowy operatives of Ever quietly working within Lincoln. They know everything. They know what the backtrackers are, that they're not normal humans, that they rely on strange infusions just to stay alive, and that those infusions are starting to fail. They know how Xavier's evil works, what he's capable of, and what he's protecting. That's not surface level intel, that's systemic access. The kind of knowledge passed down within the organization, from one generation of secrecy to the next. They're not outsiders uncovering the truth, they're insiders protecting it, upholding a legacy that began when the backtrackers first fell from the stars. So here's what I think happened. The backtrackers didn't just found Ever, they became its first test subjects. They started by infusing protocores into themselves in a controlled, systematic way, hoping to transform into wanderers. Why? Because only wanderers can open protofields, and if they could become one, they might be able to access dimensional rifts. to find their way back to Philos. But as we know, human bodies aren't exactly the best at swallowing protocores and integrating it into their systems. And if you aren't one of the chosen ones, well, you don't just die, you transform into a wanderer. Not a conscious evolved one, no, a corrupted, fragmented husk. And we see this play out in the main story, when one of Xavier's previous backtrackers harps on about using MC to possibly pave the way back to Philos. So Xavier, he does clean up on aisle 3. And that man fades out like anime shoujo sparkles, not just because Xavier dramatically deleted him from existence, but because he was already turning. And that failure? It wasn't isolated. There are entire research zones like Skyhaven filled with discarded test subjects, humans whose bodies are slowly, agonizingly rejecting their protocores, twisting into wanderers, not all at once, but bit by bit. Ever was running out of time. So what did they do next? They changed tactics. If putting a protocore into a human fails, then what if you put the human mind into a wanderer instead? That's what we start to see in Abyssal Chaos, the earliest glimpses of consciousness transfer. First into machines, simple memory preservation, digital ghost data, literally. But it was only a stepping stone, because if you could upload a mind into a computer, maybe you could also upload it into something stronger, like say, a wanderer. Skip the biology, upload the mind, let the soul do what the flesh could not. And what do you get? A sentient wanderer, capable of choice, capable of opening a specific protofield. Because right now, wanderers open random portals to random protofields. There's no roadmap, no control, but a wanderer with willpower, with human intelligence? That's not a monster, that's a dimensional compass, a key, a GPS. And that brings us back to Professor Shaylin, who points out an interesting correlation. The bigger the wanderer, the bigger the protofield it can open. Which brings us to No Hunt Zone number 7, where MC and Xavier are sent to investigate a growing threat and discover that someone is actively trying to resurrect a colossal wanderer that could wreak havoc in Lincoln. That ain't random. Ever is trying to awaken larger wanderers because bigger wanderers equals bigger protofields equals larger, more stable dimensional access points. Imagine if they could upload a human consciousness into a wanderer as massive and powerful as an Aeon worm. What dimension could that open? And once they perfect this wanderer-based navigation system, they can program where to go, target where to land, and stabilize the entry point. Well, that doesn't just get them back to Philos. No, that gets them access to the multiverse. The spatium core may just be the way for MC to wedge her foot in the door, but with the way Infold loves to ramp up the suspense, I'm leaning more to the idea that she might just end up stumbling on Froggie within these protofields through a rogue wanderer with a human conscious transferred mind that manages to rip a tear in reality itself. And considering how the game has already lovingly framed how the Fountain of Atei will be showcased to the world soon, I think Froggie's entry, or rather our entry into his world, is more imminent than we think. Okay, let's recap. So we've played Froggie Where's Waldo and figured he might be chillin' in one of the protofields, possibly either needing a spatium core or MC to return. But if every ally has both a current arc and a mythic counterpart from the past or future, where does Froggie fit into that? The answer may already be in front of us, tucked away in the plushies and the 2.0 and 3.0 music videos. As we all know, each of the boys has 2 thematic plushies, but what's interesting is what each plushie represents. One plushie seems to reflect their current link on life, and the other, one of their past or alternate lives with MC. The order doesn't really matter. What does matter is the story each plushie is trying to tell. For some of the boys, like Zane's Snowman or Caleb's Apple plush, it's not about a specific moment in time. It's more about vibe. A statement piece, like Zane is Elsa and Caleb is Isaac Newton. We know how significant that apple is for Caleb in any of his lives, because even when no apple showed up in Caleb's Fallen Cosmos myth, the devs took the time to still give it screen time in his trailer. So what do we got? Caleb's plane plushie. Easy, that's current day. He's a pilot. Silas and Raphael are pretty self-explanatory, and as for Zave, Bunny Plush is his general vibe mascot, like how Zane and Caleb have theirs, since bunnies are literally his entire aesthetic. But the alien plush, that's clearly a nod to his time travel shenanigans from future Philos. Zane's Astro Penguin, though, that one's tricky. Like, what does a penguin astronaut have to do with a surgeon? Answer? Absolutely nothing. So maybe, just maybe, this one's teasing a myth we haven't seen yet. In Zane's text message Cosmic Dream, he talks about having a dream of a penguin that he explores outer space with. Sounds random, but this man also dreams about Dawnbreaker on a regular basis, so who's to say he's not dreaming about another version of himself? I feel like the devs might have already given us a glimpse of what that third myth could be, in World Underneath Fractal Library. First off, it's Foreseer's library, so same content confirmed. Secondly, the narrator even talks about reading a story reminiscent to Dawnbreakers. I think we can make a pretty educated guess that whoever this narrator is, he's reading about Zane's other lives. You would think he'd mention something about Foreseer, maybe even Master of Fates, but nope. A world ruled by genetic engineering, where people are born and bred for assigned roles, talents bestowed by the gods, and all that. Until someone decides to take it upon themselves to engineer a child without flaws, throwing the whole system into rebellion. Sounds pretty futuristic. Futuristic enough for a penguin to hit orbit, maybe? Anyway, that brings us back to Froggie. Could the frog plushie be tied to his current life? His past life? I think so. And to figure that out, we've got to look deeper into the one place Infold always loves to sneak lore into. The 2.0 and 3.0 music videos. Quick disclaimer here, I will be saying Chinese words from this point forward, but I would like to clarify I am not Chinese and I do not speak it, so please forgive me for any butchering of the pronunciation. Yeah, okay, back to the scheduled program. We know the devs love a good teaser drop. They gave us the first hint of Caleb's Fallen Cosmos in 2.0, then went full confirmation mode in 3.0. The question then is, who this could be? Originally, when 2.0 dropped, a lot of players were betting their money, their soul, and their last temple ritual that the mountain imagery had to be Caleb's myth. And to be fair, it made sense. But now that we know Caleb is the falling man from the sky, clearly echoing Fallen Cosmos, those mountain scenes are starting to feel less Caleb-coded. Especially when 3.0 doubles down on that imagery. Golden tones, lovers meeting in the middle, and dramatic mountainous skylines. So, if that's not Caleb, then who's that diva? Let's wind it back to 2.0 first. I actually think this might be another breadcrumb, one that low-key screams Froggie is chilling in the Protofield right now. Writers love this trick, flipping the world upside down to say, hey look, parallel universe alert! It's cinematic shorthand for duality. Think Stranger Things with the upside down. Chinese dramas do this too. Too many examples to count, but Love Game and Eastern Fantasy instantly came to mind. Check it. But could 3.0 be teasing Froggie's mythic past? Lore enthusiasts were already on it. A bunch of us were speculating that the bridge imagery might actually be referencing the legend of the Qixi festival. TLDR, a goddess and a mortal fall in love, get married, but are torn apart because their love is forbidden. Once a year, on the 7th day of the lunar month, a flock of magpies forms a bridge between heaven and earth, letting them reunite for just one night. The Protofield theory I'm putting out is quaking in its boots. This story is so romantic, it literally inspired Chinese Valentine's Day, which is celebrated in August, not February like in the West. This year, it falls on August 29th, and guys? Silas was released last July. Caleb followed about 7 months later. Would it really be so crazy if Infold drops Froggie following the same pattern? Now, here's where it could get even crazier. For our wallets. Right after Qixi Festival comes another major festival, the Mid-Autumn Festival, landing on October 6th this year. I bring this up because if we look at what story the festival is based on, it's centered around the story of Chang'e and Hou Yi. There are different versions, of course, but the gist is, Chang'e drinks an elixir of immortality and ascends to the moon, leaving her husband behind on Earth. Another heartbreaking celestial love story. In most versions of the tale, Chang'e is accompanied by a rabbit, which, fair, is probably why some fandom girlies have been connecting the dots to Xavier. But in older, more Daoist retellings, Chang'e doesn't bring a bunny. She becomes a toad. Which brings us back to Froggie. In Chinese symbolism, frogs represent a lot of things: wealth, transformation, and, most interestingly, immortality. And I know, just pick one legend and stick to it already, But girlies, have you met Infold? They love mixing cultural references like it's a mythological fusion buffet. 1 part folklore, 1 part sci-fi, 2 parts emotional damage. And honestly, I support the psychic trauma. I mean, a bunch of creatives do this. Just look at how Over the Moon did it. They combined a few Chinese stories together to have it where Chang'e and Ho-Yi can see each other again once a year. So, if all of this lines up, should we be bracing ourselves for Froggie's grand entrance sometime between late July and August? And if his lore also aligns with a few reflective story beats of Chang'e and Ho-Yi, can we also expect a limited myth drop around October? If I'm right, maybe, yeah. I can already hear y'all saying, you're contradicting yourself, girl, you're contradicting yourself. Zane's birthday is on September 5th, and Xavier's birthday is October 16th. Not to mention, releasing his limited myth after just a couple of months of his release? That's messy! Well, have we ever known Infold not to be a messy gal with her banner schedules? Just look at what happened this year alone. Raphael's birthday was in early March, and then Caleb's first limited myth dropped late March, 2 months after his debut, and then Silas's birthday followed in April immediately after. 3 different types of content, back to back to back, and somehow we're still alive? Which is actually so bad, because now Infold knows what kind of unhinged stunts they can keep pulling on us, and we'll still crawl back like they're our intolerably hot but toxic ex. Pivoting back to Daoism real quick, remember how I mentioned that the story of Chang'e turning into a frog comes from Daoist lore? You know what else is deeply rooted in Daoism? Huanduen. This little potato loaf is Huanduen, a figure from Daoist cosmology that represents primordial chaos, a nebulous state of the universe before heaven and earth separated. And who was our little mascot for chaos again? Our little identity crisis having buddy here, Wontoni. Naming his part of the game Abyssal Chaos is already hilarious levels of on the nose, but even his name is a cheeky little wink. The way wonton, the dumpling in Chinese, sounds exactly the same way Huanduen is pronounced. Okay, walk with me here. If I'm right, and Froggie really is from one of the Protofield worlds, a land that may be eras past, what if when he came to Lincoln he built bots like Wontoni, reminiscent of Huanduen, which is a representation of primordial chaos, the time before the universe existed, before his life and story truly began? To feel closer to his home, to her home beyond the stars. Could it be that the bots are the only tether he has left to link on, his tether to her? And if we look at how Huanduen is typically depicted, it has 6 legs, 4 wings, and a featureless face. Guess who else has cheeky little wings? All this to say that it's possible he's either trapped on the other side, or he's biding his time there, waiting for MC to come get him herself, waiting to give her what might have originally belonged to her, a protocore, or rather, an ether core that could help stabilize her heart, something that Silas and Xavier have been hard at work, desperate to find. And the thing is, maybe it's not even for lack of trying. Maybe he has been attempting to cross over, and maybe, with each attempt, it's managed to cause catastrophic consequences instead.
Huh?
And that, besties, brings us to the end of part 2 of the Froggie saga. I know, I originally said this would all be wrapped up in 2 parts, but once again, I have wildly underestimated just how deep this frog-shaped rabbit hole goes. So for everyone who was expecting closure today, I'm sorry, I truly thought I could do it. But Infold lore waits for no one, and neither does my overanalysis. But there's just one more segment to go. I hope. Part 3 drops next weekend, and heads up, it's gonna be a little different from what you've seen so far. Whereas parts 1 and 2 were deep dives into lore, symbolism, and receipts, part 3 is gonna be way more opinion heavy. Still backed by evidence, of course, like who do you think I am? But I'll be laying out my personal takes on some fan favorite suspects, namely Nest Guy and Sick Guy. Are they Froggie in disguise? Are we reaching just a tad, or are we onto something massive? If you're still curious and ready to spiral with me just a little longer, I'll see you then. Until next time, may your polls be blessed, your plushies stay safe, and your frog theories stay just a bit unhinged enough to be fun. Stay froggy!